This is Module 5, Scheduling and Reporting. In this module, you will learn how to create worksheets, learn how to format worksheets, learn how to report objects, and learn how to combine worksheets. This is Lesson 5.1, Worksheets to Count Things. In this lesson, you will learn how to create a worksheet, learn how to format worksheet cells, learn how to create a worksheet to count objects in a drawing, and learn to place a worksheet on a sheet layer for printing. Back to Vectorworks. We want to learn how to make worksheets, so we're going to teach you how to do that. But just let me say that worksheets are one of the most powerful areas of Vectorworks, and it just allows us to extract so much information. Let's start by opening exercise 5.1. Here it is here. I've opened up my stationery file, so it's ended up as Untitled 2. And when I select this polygon, which is my boundary, I can see the class, the layer, the plane, and so on. Right down the very bottom, just here, I can actually name objects. So one of the things we can do with worksheets is to search for objects based on their name, or their class, or their type, and so on. There's lots of things we can search for. The simplest thing is to look for things based on their name. So I'm going to name that Site. There's also a polygon in here, which is the outline of my house. So here I'm going to name that House. Now I can look for those areas and I can search for one, compare it to the other, and see what my percentage of cover is. I need the resource manager for this. Here's my resource manager, and we need to create a new resource. Now this isn't the only way to make a worksheet, but it's just an introduction. I'm going to create a new resource, and the resource I want is a worksheet. So anytime you want to do scheduling or reporting, you'll be using a worksheet. So we're going to call this Site Area Calculations. So we want 5 rows and 2 columns. Click OK, and there we are. So now I can name this. So let's just put a little bit of a title at the top here. We're going to call it Site Area Calculations. Site Area Calculations. Cool. So right click and we will format that cell. So what sort of font do we want to use? Arial might be fine. The size might need to improve. Let's make it 14. Let's make it bold. Could be Arial, Arial Narrow, and so on. Any of the fonts that are currently loaded into your computer. Okay. So there we are, there's my site area calculations. I'm going to leave a blank line. This is going to be my site area. So I'm going to type in site. Better make sure I capitalize it. Site area. Hit the return key or the enter key on your keyboard and you'll go down. This is my building area. Building area. And at the bottom I want the percentage cover. So what we want is we want something that's going to look for these things all the time without us having to look them up ourselves. Why don't we just select all of those, right click, and we'll format those as well. So those are also Arial. This might be 12 point and OK. So you can see they've just gotten bigger. Now you might notice it only did that one cell. Let's just select all 3 of those. Now let's go Format and Format Cells, and we're going to make this Arial. Arial Narrow, 12 point, and click there, and OK. So there we are. So that's improved that. Now we want to do our calculations. So now we're going to look for things. We actually want Vectorworks to look for a specific object and fill its information in here. Now I'm using metric. If you're using the imperial file, you'll be looking for things based on their square meters. Just a quick review. File on the menu bar, document settings, and units. Now you might remember when we set up the units, we looked at the areas and we chose square meters for the imperial, and we chose square feet or square yards for the feet and inches. So square feet there. If you want to look for areas based on their acres, then you'll need to change that. I'm just going to cancel that. So that's just a quick review. So we're going to look for things, and we need something that's going to find areas. So let's go Insert. We have a function we could use. So let's look at a function. We need a function that looks like it's going to find areas. There's one. Okay. And our cursor is flashing between those 2 brackets. let's insert a criteria. So this is how we can search for objects. If you've got an object selected like I have, then it brings up this dialog box. I'm going to go to custom. So do we want to look for things based on their layer? We could do. Unfortunately, at the moment it's going to find 45 things, and I've just turned off design layer viewports, both referenced and non-referenced. Let's look for more choices. We could base things on their class. Still not really giving us what we want. We've named these objects, so right down the bottom we should be able to find name. So we're looking for an object whose name is, I can't remember what I called it. What did I call it? Site. Okay, so looking for objects whose name is site. There's only one because names are unique. Go OK, and we've got all this information, but we're missing something crucial to make this into an area. At the front we need to put in an equal sign, otherwise it will not be a formula. Click on the green tick and there's my area, 595. Right click, let's format that cell, and when we go to number we can say you're a dimension area, and it picks up our areas types or our area units from that units. So now what I could do is I could go right click, I could choose copy, right click here and choose paste, and it brings in exactly the same formula. All I really need to change is this word here and change that to the word house that I used previously. So now I've got 595 square meters of site area, 118.26 square meters of building area. And I need to have a calculation here which will find the difference between the two. So let's put in an equals to start, otherwise it won't be a formula. Then there, B4, divide by, which is the backslash, and then B3. Click on the green tick and it gives us our percentage cover. Right click, format that cell, and we will use a percentage. Now with the percentage we're going to use 1 decimal place and OK. So it does the percentage calculation for us. If I close that worksheet window, it disappears. Where's it gone? It's in my resource manager. Here it is here, my site area calculation. If I drag that and drop it onto a sheet layer or a design layer, I will get my report. The lines that go around the report and the fill in the middle of the report are controlled by your attributes palette. So if you choose no fill, you'll see through it. If you choose no lines, you'll lose the lines in it. Let's put those back. Double click on it to open it again. You'll notice that I get a square at this point. So what can we do? Let's start with this particular area here. Right click, let's format those cells. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to select that entire row and format the cells that way. So do we want alignment? Yes, general. Do we want to wrap the text? Do we want to have vertical text, which is quite cool for some things? What font? We've chosen our font. What border do we want? What's a border? Well, we can choose to put a border around the outside, or we can have a border at the bottom. Now it's hard to see the difference. So let's go to File, Preferences, and let's turn off our grid. So let's turn off our grid. And now when I click away, you'll see I've got a heavy line going underneath my site area calculations. I could select all of this area here, format cells, and let's do an outline to those. Okay, so now what I've got is an outline around those. Let's close that and see what it looks like on my page. So there we are, we've got a line going around the outside, we've got the site area in the middle. What happens if we give it no line? You'll see there I've lost the line around the outside, but I still have my line under the word site area calculations, and I still have my box going around that area. Now I use one of these a lot on all of my site plans to give me all of the information that I need. So I'll actually look up the street address, I'll find out the area of the site, I'll use the calculation for that, but I'll also look up town planning regulations, what my zone is, what my requirements are, what my yard setbacks are, and I'll put all of that onto one of these site area calculation type worksheets so that when I come to a project and look at it, I can see exactly what my requirements are for that site. I'll have the earthquake zone, the wind zone, it'll all be there in one easy to read worksheet. So that's pretty good, but what's the advantage? Well, what happens if something happens to my site? What happens if my site gets smaller? What happens if my house design changes? Let's just make a change to my house design. Let's make it bigger. What happens here? I can right click on this and I can recalculate, and it'll give me an updated calculation for my site area, my building coverage. So that makes it really flexible. The other thing is, once you've started to use this worksheet, you can then copy that from one project to another. Here's my site area calculation. I can drag that to another file and drop it into that other file if I wanted to. If I go to my other file, here's my template file, here's my resource manager, you'll see there's my worksheet. I can drag that into my project and it will update, find the objects. Let's just recalculate. I should end up with lots of zeros because I haven't got those objects. But isn't that really cool, the way you can just copy that in from one project into another? So what I tend to have on my own computer is a lot of these that I've created previously that I can bring from one project into this one. I have a whole library of these, and I use them for all sorts of different things. I've got drain vents, I've got my risk matrix, which is quite common where I live, and this risk matrix, we bring it in, it's got all my risk factors in it, and it does my scores, and it's really quite cool. So the advantage of these worksheets is that you can copy them easily from one file to another, or from one project to another. And at first you might think, why am I spending so much time, Jonathan? I could just do it so much more quickly. Yeah, but once you've done it, you don't have to do it again. It's available on every project. Let's just have a look at this. So we've looked at the border. Is there anything else that we're missing out? Let's have a look. So let's format those cells. We've looked at the number. We've looked at alignment. We've looked at font. We've looked at border. We haven't looked at patterns. So we could put a solid pattern under this. If you wanted to emphasize this title for some reason, you might put a color behind it, so that when we close that, we end up with a color. So you can use colors to help emphasize parts of your project. So you can use colors to emphasize parts of your worksheets. I quite often color this particular cell so that it's easier for people to see what the real answer is. So we might put a solid color. We'll use that same color again. Okay. And there we are. If I bring my cursor between A and B, you'll see I get a double arrow, and I can drag that across, and I can drag this one across, so I can make it a lot smaller if I want. If I bring my cursor right to the very bottom corner, you see I get a change in my cursor shape, and if I click and drag that, I can increase the size of my cells, or the size of my report. This little cursor, I can change that back, and I can destroy some cells and I can put it back the way I want. So if I've forgotten how many rows or columns I need, I can always add more. If I've created too many, I can always take them away. This is the end of lesson 5.1. In this lesson you learned how to create a worksheet, you learned how to format worksheet cells, you learned how to create a worksheet to count objects in a drawing, and you learned how to place a worksheet on a sheet layer for printing.